The morning sun filtered through the towering glass windows of Sterling and Brooks, a prestigious law firm nestled in the heart of Manhattan's financial district. The office buzzed with the hum of ambition lawyers in tailored suits, darted between conference rooms, their voices sharp with legal jargon, while assistants juggled phone calls and overflowing inboxes. Amid the polished chaos, James Sterling, the firm's enigmatic CEO, stood unnoticed in a dimly lit supply closet, pulling on a worn janitor's jumpsuit. At 32, James was a legend in New York's legal world, known for his razor-sharp mind and a string of high-profile wins in corporate law. But today, he wasn't the impeccably dressed executive who commanded boardrooms. Today, he was Jimmy, the new janitor, with a faded cap pulled low over his piercing blue eyes and a mop in hand. His grandmother, Margaret Sterling, had insisted on this charade. "You'll never find someone real if they know you're worth billions," she'd said over Sunday brunch at her Upper East Side penthouse, her voice equal parts mischief and wisdom. "People see money before they see you, Jimmy. Go incognito. Find a heart, not a gold digger." James had rolled his eyes but agreed. He was tired of the socialites and ladder climbers who flocked to him, their smiles as calculated as their designer outfits. So here he was, pushing a cleaning cart through the sleek halls of his own firm, testing the waters for someone genuine. Rachel Bennett, meanwhile, was navigating her first day as an intern at Sterling and Brooks. At 25, she was a bundle of nerves and determination, her auburn hair tied back in a no-nonsense ponytail. She'd fought tooth and nail to get here, years of late-night study sessions at NYU Law, scraping by on scholarships and part-time jobs. Her modest black blazer and sensible flat stood out starkly against the sea of Louboutins and Armani suits. But Rachel didn't care. She was here to prove herself, not to blend in. Her desk, tucked in a corner of the open-plan office, was already piled with case files she'd been assigned to organize. Grunt work, her supervisor Emily Carter had called it, with a smirk. Emily, a senior associate with sleek blonde hair and a penchant for passive-aggressive barbs, seemed to have taken an instant dislike to Rachel. "Don't get too comfortable," Emily had said earlier, tossing a stack of documents onto Rachel's desk. "Interns don't last long here unless they're exceptional." Rachel bit back a retort, her hazel eyes flashing with quiet resolve. She wasn't here to make enemies. She was here to build a career. As Rachel sorted through the files, she overheard whispers from the cubicles nearby. "Did you hear James Sterling's back in town?" one associate murmured to another. "The guy's a myth. Wins every case, looks like a movie star and richer than God." Rachel's ears perked up, but she kept her head down. She'd read about James Sterling in law school, his advocacy for pro bono cases, and his knack for turning impossible lawsuits into victories. The thought of working under him, even indirectly, sent a thrill through her. But the whispers turned catty. "He's probably dating some heiress," another voice chimed in. "No way he'd notice anyone here." Rachel shook her head, focusing on her work. She didn't have time for office gossip. She had a wage dispute case for a group of construction workers to prep a case Emily had dismissed as beneath her pay grade. By mid-morning, James, as Jimmy, was mopping the lobby when he spotted an elderly woman struggling with a heavy bag near the revolving doors. Margaret Sterling, his grandmother, was playing her part to perfection, her silver hair tucked under a scarf and her coat deliberately frayed at the edges. She'd insisted on this test, claiming it would reveal who had a heart worth knowing. James watched from the corner of his eye as employees breezed past her, their noses buried in phones or briefcases. Margaret let out a theatrical groan, dropping her bag with a thud. Most ignored her, but Rachel, who had been sent to fetch coffee for a meeting, paused. She set the tray of cups on a bench and hurried over. "Ma'am, are you okay? Let me help you with that," Rachel said, her voice warm with concern. She knelt to gather the scattered contents of the bag, some apples, a worn paperback, and a few coins. Margaret's eyes twinkled as she played along. "Oh, thank you, dear. You're too kind. Most folks just walk on by." Rachel smiled, brushing off the praise. "It's no trouble. Do you need help getting somewhere?" Margaret shook her head, patting Rachel's hand. "You're a good one." "What's your name?" "Rachel Bennett," she replied, unaware of James watching from across the lobby, his heart skipping a beat. Back in the office, Emily Carter was less than pleased with Rachel's initiative. "You're late with the coffee." She snapped her manicured nails, tapping impatiently on her desk. Rachel apologized, explaining about the elderly woman, but Emily cut her off. "Save the sob stories. This is Sterling and Brooks, not a charity." Rachel's jaw tightened, but she nodded, returning to her desk. She didn't notice James, still in his janitor's uniform, lingering near the copy machine observing the exchange. He'd seen Emily's type before, ambitious, ruthless, and quick to tear others down to climb the ladder. But Rachel? She was different. There was a fire in her tempered by kindness, and James found himself intrigued. As the day wore on, Rachel threw herself into the wage dispute case. The clients were a group of immigrant construction workers who'd been shorted pay by a shady contractor. It wasn't glamorous, but Rachel saw it as a chance to make a difference. She spent her lunch break poring over labor laws, scribbling notes in the margins of her legal pad. Across the office, James overheard Emily and Mark Lawson, another senior associate, plotting to undermine her. "She's too eager," Mark said, leaning back in his chair. "Let's give her some extra work. See if she cracks." Emily smirked, tossing her hair. "I'll make sure her case files get misplaced. She'll learn her place." James clenched his mop handle, his knuckles whitening. He'd built Sterling and Brooks to be a place of integrity, not petty office politics. But he held his tongue, curious to see how Rachel would handle the pressure. That afternoon, Rachel noticed discrepancies in her case files. Key documents were missing, and some pages had been swapped with irrelevant contracts. She approached Emily, keeping her tone professional. "Excuse me, Emily. I think there's been a mix-up with my files. Could you check if they were misplaced?" Emily's smile was saccharine. "Misplaced? Maybe you're just not cut out for this, Rachel. Mistakes happen when you're in over your head." Rachel's cheeks flushed, but she didn't back down. "I'll find them myself, then." She spent hours cross-referencing records in the firm's database, her determination unwavering. James, sweeping nearby, caught snippets of her quiet muttering as she worked. Article 7, Fair Labor Standards Act. "They can't get away with this," he smiled to himself. She was sharp, tenacious, and unafraid to stand her ground. By late afternoon, Margaret Sterling made another appearance, this time inside the firm's lobby, clutching a tattered envelope. She approached Rachel's desk, her voice trembling for effect. "Excuse me, miss. You were so kind earlier. I need help with something. It's about my grandson's wages. He's a worker, you see, and they haven't paid him." Rachel looked up, her exhaustion melting into empathy. "Of course, ma'am. Let's take a look." She took the envelope, which contained fabricated pay stubs and a contract Margaret's handiwork, to test Rachel's skills. As Rachel scanned the documents, her brow furrowed. "This looks like a clear violation of labor laws. I can help you file a claim." Margaret's eyes gleamed with approval, but she kept up the act. "You're an angel, dear. My Jimmy's all I've got." Rachel promised to work on it, unaware that Jimmy was watching her from the hallway, his heart warming at her genuine compassion. As the day ended, Emily and Mark cornered Rachel in the break room. Still playing hero for the cleaning lady's grandson, Mark sneered, sipping his espresso. "You're wasting your time on lost causes." Rachel met his gaze unflinching. If standing up for people who've been cheated is a lost cause, maybe I'm in the wrong firm. Emily laughed, cold and cutting. Keep that attitude, and you will be. James, emptying a trash can nearby, overheard every word. He wanted to step in to reveal himself and put them in their place, but he held back. Rachel didn't need saving, she was holding her own. Still, he made a mental note to keep an eye on Emily and Mark. Their behavior was a stain on his firm's reputation, and he wouldn't tolerate it much longer. That evening, as Rachel packed up her things, she found a note slipped under her files. Keep fighting the good fight. You're not alone. It was unsigned, but the handwriting was elegant, almost too refined for the office. She frowned, puzzled, but tucked it into her bag. Outside, James watched her leave from the lobby, his janitor's cap still low over his eyes. He pulled out his phone and texted Margaret, "Found someone worth knowing." "She's the real deal." Margaret's reply came instantly. "Told you so, Jimmy." "Now don't screw it up." James chuckled, slipping his phone back into his pocket. Tomorrow he'd push the test further, maybe even talk to Rachel himself as Jimmy. For now, he was content to watch her shine a beacon of heart and grit in a world of sharp suits and sharper egos. The Manhattan skyline glittered against the dawn, casting a golden hue over Sterling and Brooks, as Rachel Bennett arrived for her second week at the firm. Her first few days had been a whirlwind of challenges, but she'd held her ground, fueled by a stubborn determination to prove herself. Her desk was a fortress of case files, each one a battleground in her fight to make a mark. The wage dispute case for the construction workers, and now the mysterious Jimmy's grandmother, was her focus, a chance to show she could handle real stakes. But the office was a minefield of egos and agendas, and Rachel was about to learn just how deep the rivalries ran. Meanwhile, James Sterling, still masquerading as Jimmy the janitor, was watching her every move, his curiosity about her growing into something he couldn't quite name. His grandmother Margaret was gleefully orchestrating from the sidelines, determined to see her grandson settle down with someone who saw past his wealth. Rachel's morning began with a jolt, when Emily Carter, her sharp-tongued supervisor, dropped a new stack of files on her desk. "Client meeting at 10. You're presenting the wage case," Emily said, her smile more predatory than encouraging. Rachel blinked, caught off guard. "Me? But I'm just an intern." Emily's eyes gleamed. "Exactly. Sink or swim, Rachel. Don't embarrass us." Rachel nodded, her stomach twisting. She'd prepared the case meticulously, but presenting to clients, especially ones as desperate as these workers, was a leap she hadn't expected. She dove into her notes, oblivious to James, who was polishing a nearby window, his ears tuned to the exchange. He'd overheard Emily and Mark Lawson scheming the night before, plotting to overload Rachel with work to make her crack. James's jaw tightened. He'd built this firm on merit, not sabotage, and Emily's games were testing his patience. As Rachel prepped, she noticed a commotion near the elevators. A woman in her late 20s, dressed in a sleek Chanel suit, strode into the office like she owned it. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant updo, and around her neck gleamed a diamond necklace that caught the light like a small constellation. Whispers rippled through the cubicles. "That's Olivia Harper," an associate hissed. "James Sterling's old flame. Word is she's back from London to join the firm." Rachel's curiosity piqued, but she pushed it aside, focusing on her presentation. Olivia's arrival, however, was no coincidence. Margaret had tipped her off, hoping a rival would push James to act on his growing interest in Rachel. Olivia, ambitious and aware of James's status, saw her return as a chance to reclaim a place by his side, or at least in his firm's spotlight. At the client meeting, Rachel stood before a small group of construction workers, their faces etched with worry. She explained their case with clarity, citing labor laws and precedent cases. Her voice steady despite her nerves. The workers nodded grateful for someone who seemed to care. "We'll fight for every cent you're owed," Rachel promised, earning tentative smiles. James, lingering in the hallway with his cleaning cart, caught the tail end of her presentation. Her passion reminded him of his early days before wealth and status complicated everything. He slipped away before she could spot him, but not before Emily cornered him. "Jimmy Wright," she said, her tone condescending. "Make sure the conference room's spotless after this. Those clients aren't exactly high class." James nodded, biting back a retort. Emily's elitism was exactly why he was here in disguise, to root out the rot in his firm. Back at her desk, Rachel found her files tampered with. Again, key evidence for the wage case had been replaced with blank pages. She clenched her fists, suspecting Emily or Mark. Before she could confront them, Margaret appeared, this time with a new sob story about Jimmy's unpaid wages. "He's a good boy, works construction, but they cheated him," Margaret said, her eyes wide with feigned distress. Rachel, though swamped, took the time to review the documents Margaret handed her. They were deliberately vague, a test of her diligence, but Rachel didn't flinch. "I'll look into it, ma'am," she said, jotting down notes. James, watching from a distance, felt a pang of guilt. His grandmother's schemes were piling work on Rachel, but her kindness never wavered. He made a mental note to lighten her load somehow. The office buzzed with Olivia's presence. She was charming associates left and right, dropping hints about her history with James. "We were inseparable in law school," she told a group at the coffee machine, her laugh light but calculated. "He always said I was his muse." Rachel overheard her curiosity turning to unease. If Olivia was James Sterling's ex, what did that mean for the firm's dynamics? She shook it off, but Emily seized the moment to needle her. "Don't get any ideas about climbing the ladder, Rachel," she said, leaning over her desk. "Sterling's got his eyes on someone like Olivia, not an intern playing Good Samaritan." Rachel's cheeks burned, but she kept her voice even. "I'm here to work, not chase anyone." Emily smirked, unconvinced. That afternoon, Rachel's suspicions about her tampered files were confirmed when she found a memo with Mark's initials in the recycling bin. It outlined a plan to lose her evidence to make her look incompetent. Furious, she confronted Mark in the break room. "If you've got a problem with me, say it to my face," she said, her voice low but firm. Mark laughed, brushing her off. "You're paranoid, intern. Focus on not screwing up." James, emptying a trash can nearby, caught the exchange. He wanted to intervene, but Rachel's fire held him back. She wasn't helpless, she was a fighter. Still, he discreetly slipped the memo into his pocket. Evidence mattered, and he'd make sure it was used. Margaret, meanwhile, was upping the ante. She cornered Rachel outside the office, clutching a fake medical bill. "It's for Jimmy," she said, her voice trembling. "He got hurt on the job and we can't pay." Rachel's heart sank. She promised to prioritize the case even as her own workload threatened to bury her. James, overhearing, felt a mix of admiration and frustration. His grandmother was pushing Rachel to her limits, but she kept rising to the challenge. He decided to step in not as James Sterling, but as Jimmy. Approaching Rachel in the lobby, he adjusted his cap and cleared his throat. "Hey, you helped my grandma, right? I'm Jimmy." Rachel looked up, surprised by the janitor's earnest tone. "Oh yeah, she mentioned you. I'm working on your case." James nodded, his voice soft. "Thanks. Means a lot." Their eyes met briefly, and Rachel felt an unexpected warmth. There was something about him, something deeper than his rough exterior suggested. The day took a darker turn when Emily and Mark escalated their sabotage. They accidentally sent Rachel's wage case files to a rival firm claiming it was her mistake. The fallout was swift. Clients called furious, threatening to pull their business. Emily played innocent, pinning the blame on Rachel. "She's just an intern," Emily told the managing partner, her voice dripping with mock regret. "I should have supervised her better." Rachel, summoned to the partner's office, stood her ground. "I didn't send those files. I have backups to prove it," she said, producing a USB drive with her original work. The partner, skeptical but impressed, gave her a chance to fix the mess. James, lingering outside, overheard and made a call to his assistant, instructing them to trace the email's origin. He wasn't ready to reveal himself, but he wouldn't let Rachel take the fall. As evening fell, Olivia made her move. She cornered Jimmy in the hallway, mistaking him for a lowly worker. "You're the janitor, right? Make sure my office is spotless tomorrow," she said, her tone dismissive. James nodded, hiding a smirk. Olivia's arrogance was a stark contrast to Rachel's humility, and it solidified his resolve to keep up the charade. Later, he found Rachel working late, her desk lamp casting shadows on her tired face. He left a coffee on her desk with a note, "You're doing great. Don't let them win." Rachel smiled, puzzled but touched. She didn't know who her anonymous ally was, but their support kept her going. Margaret, meanwhile, was plotting her next move. Over dinner at her penthouse, she grilled James. "That Rachel girl's a keeper, Jimmy. When are you going to tell her who you are?" James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Soon, Grandma. But she's got enough on her plate." Margaret's eyes sparkled. "Then let's make it interesting. I'll invite her to our charity gala this weekend. You show up as James Sterling. See how she reacts." James groaned, but a part of him was curious. Would Rachel see him differently when the truth came out? For now, he was content to watch her fight her spirit. A beacon in the cutthroat world of Sterling and Brooks. But the clock was ticking, and with Olivia circling and Emily's schemes intensifying, James knew the charade couldn't last forever. The chandelier-lit ballroom of the Plaza Hotel glowed with opulence, its golden light reflecting off crystal glasses and designer gowns as New York's elite mingled at the Sterling and Brooks annual charity gala. Rachel Bennett stood near the edge of the crowd, feeling like an outsider in her simple navy dress borrowed from a thrift store but carefully pressed. She'd been invited by Margaret Sterling, the kind elderly woman she'd helped weeks ago, and though she felt out of place among Manhattan's high society, she was here to support the firm's pro bono initiatives. Her heart raced with a mix of nerves and excitement. She'd heard James Sterling himself would attend, and the chance to meet the legendary lawyer felt like a dream. Little did she know, the man she'd been talking to as Jimmy the janitor was watching her from across the room, his tailored tuxedo, a far cry from his usual jumpsuit. James Sterling was ready to end his charade tonight, but not before one final test. The office drama had escalated with Emily Carter and Mark Lawson's schemes threatening Rachel's career, and a new player, Olivia Harper, claiming to be his fiancée. As the gala unfolded, truths would unravel, loyalties would be tested, and Rachel would learn the value of staying true to herself. Rachel clutched a glass of sparkling water, scanning the room for Margaret. The older woman had been a surprising ally, slipping her notes of encouragement, and even helping her track down the missing files from her wage dispute case. Rachel had won the case that week, securing back pay for the construction workers, and the victory had boosted her confidence. But the fallout from Emily and Mark's sabotage lingered. Rumors swirled that Rachel had leaked client data, a lie spread by Emily to discredit her. The firm's managing partner had given her until Monday to clear her name, and Rachel was determined to find proof. She'd spent late nights analyzing email logs, suspecting Emily had hacked her account to send the files to a rival firm. As she stood lost in thought, Margaret appeared, her silver hair swept into an elegant bun, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Rachel, dear, you look radiant," Margaret said, squeezing her hand. "Come, I want you to meet someone special tonight." Rachel smiled, assuming Margaret meant a potential mentor, unaware that the someone was her grandson James. Across the ballroom, James adjusted his cufflinks, his gaze fixed on Rachel. She stood out not because of flash or wealth, but because of her quiet strength. The past weeks had shown him her resilience, how she'd faced Emily's barbs, Mark's sabotage, and even Olivia's attempts to undermine her. Olivia, who'd been parading around the firm claiming to be his fiancée, was currently holding court near the bar, her diamond necklace, a gift from her own family, not James, sparkling as she spun tales of their romance. James had never proposed to her. Their law school fling had ended years ago, when he realized her ambition outstripped her integrity. But Olivia's return, egged on by Margaret's scheming, had complicated things. She'd spread rumors that James had bought her a rare Tiffany necklace, the Star of the Sea, fueling speculation that she was his true love. James had let the lie fester, curious to see how Rachel would react to the gossip. So far, she'd ignored it, focusing on her work, which only deepened his admiration. As the gala's speeches began, Rachel took a seat near the front, her notebook ready. She jotted down ideas for improving the firm's pro bono program, inspired by her recent case. Margaret, seated beside her, leaned in. "You're a rare one, Rachel. Not many here would care about those workers the way you do." Rachel blushed, brushing off the praise. "It's just the right thing to do." Margaret patted her hand, her smile cryptic. "Hold on to that heart, dear. It'll take you far." On stage, the MC introduced James Sterling, and the room erupted in applause. Rachel's breath caught as James stepped into the spotlight, his presence commanding yet warm. He spoke passionately about the firm's mission to balance profit with purpose, his words resonating with Rachel's own values. She didn't notice Jimmy the janitor anywhere, and a pang of disappointment hit her. She'd grown fond of his quiet encouragement. After the speech, Margaret pulled Rachel toward James, who was surrounded by admirers. "James, this is Rachel Bennett," Margaret said, her voice loud enough to cut through the chatter. "The intern who's been saving your firm's soul." James's eyes locked onto Rachel's, a flicker of amusement in them. "Rachel," he said, extending a hand. "I've heard great things." Rachel shook his hand, her mind racing. His voice was familiar, but she couldn't place it. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling. I'm just doing my job." Before James could respond, Olivia swept in her arm, looping through his. "James, darling, you didn't tell me you were meeting interns tonight," she said, her tone sugary but sharp. Rachel stepped back, sensing the tension, but Margaret wasn't having it. "Olivia, dear, why don't you tell Rachel about that necklace I hear? It's quite the story." Olivia's smile faltered, but she recovered, touching the diamonds at her throat. "A gift from James, of course. The Star of the Sea." "Isn't it stunning?" Rachel nodded politely, but her gut told her something was off. The gala took a dramatic turn when Emily and Mark, emboldened by champagne, approached Rachel in a quiet corner. Still playing the martyr, Emily sneered, her voice low. "Everyone knows you leaked those files. You're done here." Rachel's temper flared. "I have proof it was you, Emily. The email logs don't lie." Mark laughed, but his eyes were nervous. "Good luck proving that. No one's going to believe an intern over us." James, overhearing from nearby, stepped in, his voice calm but steely. "Actually, I've seen the logs. Rachel's right." The color drained from Emily's face as James continued. "I also know about the memo you and Mark wrote planning to sabotage her. Care to explain? The crowd around them quieted, sensing a showdown. Emily stammered, but James cut her off. You're both suspended pending a full investigation. Pack your things Monday. Rachel's jaw dropped, her heart pounding. How did James know so much? As Emily and Mark slunk away, Olivia seized the moment to escalate her claim. James, tell them the truth, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. Tell them we're engaged. The room fell silent, and Rachel's stomach twisted. She'd never believed the gossip, but Olivia's confidence was unnerving. James's expression hardened. Olivia, we were never engaged. That necklace, you bought it yourself. I checked the auction records. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Olivia's face turned crimson. You're lying, she snapped, but James held up a hand. Enough. You're welcome at the firm, but stop spreading lies. He turned to Rachel, his voice softening. Rachel, can we talk? Confused and overwhelmed? She nodded, following him to a quiet balcony overlooking Central Park. Under the stars, James took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. I'm Jimmy. Rachel's eyes widened, her mind, piecing it together. The familiar voice, the encouraging notes, the way he'd always been nearby. You're the janitor, she whispered. James chuckled, rubbing his neck. And the CEO. I went undercover to see who in my firm was real. You were the only one who helped my grandmother without expecting anything. You fought for those workers, stood up to Emily, and never gave up. Rachel's head spun, anger mixing with awe. You lied to me, she said, her voice trembling. Why? James met her gaze, his eyes earnest. Because I wanted to know you, the real you, and I do? You're kind, fierce, and exactly what this firm needs. Rachel's anger softened, but she wasn't ready to let him off. You could have trusted me. James nodded. I know. I'm sorry. Let me make it up to you, starting with dinner. No secrets this time. The gala ended with Rachel and James talking late into the night, Margaret beaming from the sidelines. On Monday, Emily and Mark were fired, their sabotage exposed by the email logs Rachel had meticulously gathered. Olivia left the firm, her reputation tarnished. Rachel was offered a permanent role on James's team, and though she accepted, she made it clear she'd earn her place on her own terms. Over time, she and James grew closer, their bond built on mutual respect and shared values. The experience taught Rachel a profound lesson. True integrity means standing up for what's right, even when the odds are stacked against you. For James, it was a reminder that wealth and status mean nothing without a heart to guide them. And for Sterling and Brooks, Rachel's rise became a symbol of what the firm could be, a place where justice, not ambition, prevailed. The lesson resonated beyond the office. In a world quick to judge and scheme, kindness and honesty are the truest measures of success, and they shine brightest when tested.